In this module, we'll be doing a brief overview of assessments and how they can be used to develop your IEPs, identify goals, and plan instruction. I trust that by now most of you have already talked about assessments in your education courses. Assessments are vitally important to the development of a quality IEP, just as they are vitally important to good instruction. Fortunately, there's a variety of assessments that are already built into most public school programs. For example, you have required state testing, such as your SOLs. You'll probably have required district testing. Most schools have some type of testing as a part of the regular grading periods. And then hopefully you're using your formative assessments as a part of instruction. And then what we're going to be talking about a little bit more in this class is the testing that is required for the development of an IEP and that is used to help track progress towards specific goals. All students are required to participate in state testing. For high school students, the state test is the Standards of Learning End of Course test. 1% of the tested population may participate in the Virginia Alternate Assessment Program if they meet the criteria. This test is reserved for students with significant cognitive impairments who require a modified curriculum. Students with IEPs may have accommodations on their end-of-course SOL test, and there are alternative tests for specific tests. Also, students may be eligible for modified credit accommodations, which means that they may be able to get a verified credit for a score that is somewhat lower than the required pass score as long as they meet the guidelines or the criteria. Of course, the impacts of state testing are obvious. Our instruction must be focused on mastery of SOLs, for this is what will help our students to earn a regular diploma, which opens up more job opportunities as well as more opportunities for education beyond high school. Our IEP goals should be linked directly to SOL skills or those skills that are related to SOL standards. And we should always look at fair and appropriate accommodations for testing, which will help our students to access the test. Remember, the test accommodation should not give students an unfair advantage, but simply level the playing field so that they are able to show what they know in the content area. The advantage of SOL testing at the high school level for all students is that it keeps expectations high for our students with disabilities. Most school districts begin some type of benchmark testing early in the primary grades. The purpose of this testing is to track student progress towards the mastery of SOLs. These tests also help students to prepare for SOL testing and can be very beneficial in targeting those skills that may need remediation. Benchmark testing can be helpful in helping to identify targets for remediation, and it can also allow opportunities to practice different accommodations and evaluate their helpfulness. Most high school courses include a variety of tests or assignments that will lead to the student's grade for that course. Students should have accommodations similar to the ones that they will have on the end of course testing throughout the course, and especially on major tests. Major tests can be used to measure progress towards students' IEP goals, especially if the special education teacher and gen ed teacher have worked together to develop the test. They can also be used to determine targets for remediation. Testing methods may be modified for students who have significant disabilities, and this should be addressed in the IEP. Although no one is crazy about a lot of testing, it can have some benefits. Testing throughout the semester can help students to prepare for taking tests. This can help our students as they prepare for educational settings beyond high school. They can also be used to measure students' progress and to determine specific goals. That may have the most impact on student performance is the formative assessment. This is those assessments that we do as we're teaching, where we stop and have students to summarize what we've said, or answer a few quick questions, or give an example, or perform a task that we've asked them to do. These are very important, especially for our students who may sometimes not know the right questions to ask or may not be effective at getting the assistance they need. So it's very, very important for us to check for understanding frequently. All parts of the IEP should be based on the present level of performance. Therefore, if the present level of performance does not include current and thorough information regarding the student's abilities, weaknesses, and needs, then it is impossible to write an appropriate IEP. That is why assessments are such an important part of preparing to write an IEP. It is essential that you have a good understanding of the student's needs in all academic areas that are impacted by their disability. In addition, it is important that you have information regarding other deficit areas such as behavior, social skills, adaptive skills. Without thorough testing and assessments, it is impossible to adequately develop the IEP. One thing to remember about assessments, always look at what's already available to you before you do additional assessments. There's no need to overdo or to redo if there's already assessments available that are a part of that student's regular program. Use those whenever possible. When you do decide to do additional assessments, make sure that they're giving you information that is meaningful and relevant and that can be used for developing IEP goals. Don't be afraid to use informal curriculum-based assessments. These are especially helpful for math courses that may have very specific information that the student's going to be required to know. Therefore, you develop a test that fits right with that course, and that gives you good goals to target on your IEP. Always think about your data collection when you are determining your assessments. What am I going to find out from this assessment, and how can I write a goal and collect data to monitor progress on that goal? It's important to remember that assessment does not end with the IEP development. It's an ongoing process. We should be continuously collecting data on our students' progress towards each and every goal in their IEP. This may be through observation, it could be through formal written test, it can be through informal test, it can be through ratings or projects. It doesn't really matter how, as long as that assessment gives you clear evidence of the level of mastery that you have written into your goal. That's why I always tell teachers, whenever you're writing goals, always think of how you're going to assess that goal, and it'll make it much easier for you in the long run. As we mentioned before, sometimes there are assessments that are required that are not academic assessments. For our students with autism, we should do some social skills ratings to make sure we're addressing this area for these students. Our students with intellectual disabilities or emotional disabilities, we may need to look at their adaptive skills, do some ratings there, and track that progress as well. For our students transitioning, we are constantly looking at interest inventories, vocational assessments, and other transition assessments that may give us more information that will help that student prepare for life after their high school experience. One last word about assessments and IEPs. Any assessment score that is listed in an IEP must include an explanation of what the test measures and what the score means. For example, if you list an SOL score, you must explain what the SOL is. You can do this briefly, and then add what the score means in terms of whether it's failing, passing, or advanced. This is true for any assessment score that you list in an IEP. Just keep in mind in writing your IEPs that they should be written in such a way that anyone who picked that IEP up would understand that student's strengths, weaknesses, and needs. In other words, you should use wording that is understandable by the lay person, especially by the parent.